Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat. I'm Phil Holdsworth of Aurum Gold, your host, and my guest today is Chris Wilson. Chris is the commercial manager for an organisation called Soltaire, but Chris is also involved in Midlife Men's Project. Hello Chris.
Good afternoon, Phil. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you, and thank you so much for being my guest today. Chris, I'm intrigued. The Midlife Men's Project, when I can put my teeth in. Tell me a little bit about that. What does it...
There's a lot of M's there, isn't it? Well, being a man at midlife, whether or not 52 is already past midlife, I'm not too sure. But I found that there was a place where men were not ready to talk about some of their experiences and some of their issues as they go through life. And the word crisis is often associated with that phrase. And I wanted to challenge that, to talk about mindset as opposed to crisis. So I have a little side hustle when I'm not working, which is to enable men to get out their messy middle. And we have 5 pillars around that, which is mindfulness, energy, nutrition, sleep, and relationships.
Right. That's really interesting, is that? Because, I mean, we hear so much in the world of psychology particularly about, and well-being, about those pillars that you talk about, sleep, nutrition, physical exercise. But, and interestingly, just recently, we were having a conversation about connection and being connected to your fellow human being. But it's interesting. Men have got quite a lot of challenges, and I'm not just saying that women don't, but let's focus on this at the moment and the work that you're doing. Some of those challenges, especially in the uncertain times that we're in, for some can be quite difficult.
Yeah, and let's cut to the chase in terms of what here you're to talk about is money. And without being stereotypical, there is still a certain belief that the man is the breadwinner, the man is the hunter, the man is the food provider.
Yeah.
And when they are facing into midlife and they haven't found their potential, or that they're searching for the money story and they know that the time is ticking, well, that becomes a very anxious time, and men still don't talk about it. If you ask a woman how many times have they shared their feelings with each other as a lady, they'll do it every day because it's natural. Yeah. You ask a man how many times he shared his feeling with his fellow friends, you might struggle to see whether or not he's done that in the last month. And that's not good.
No, they'll certainly give you a kind of funny look, won't they? Somebody once said to me, you know, men will willing to talk if they're walking alongside each other, or they've got something to do, or they're in the pub.
Yeah, or the safe space, you know, football, other things that might distract the eye. You know, we can talk about that quite readily because it's neutral, it's tribal. But when you get to the heart of the issue is, are you doing what you think you should be doing as a man? Yes or no? Oh, well, that's a difficult question, Phil. Do you want another pint? And it all becomes a little bit more tricky. And I just want to get rid of that trickiness and just get it out there and just say, hey, do you know what? It's okay to talk about money.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it, though?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
It's interesting, isn't it? Mental health and money, two of which are least spoken about subjects. And people will say, who are listening to this right now, will say, but everybody's talking about mental health. Yeah, but are they talking about it at a personal level? And how comfortable do each of us feel in being able to talk about some of those things? There's a figure, I can't remember what it is, but with regards to what people talk about, they are more likely to talk about their sex life than they are to talk about money. And that's interesting, when that's something quite personal, and yet money is one of those taboo subjects. So in terms of uncertainty then, Chris, I mean, what kind of things have you been seeing in terms of, the impact of uncertainty, particularly on men and men in business?
Well, I suppose at the worst case scenario, it's end of life. And one of the reasons why I was so drawn to trying to do something is because the statistical numbers coming out of the Office of National Statistics is that the decision for men to end their lives is at its highest level ever.
Yeah.
And is that as a result of money or not? But there's a correlation between the statistics going up and where we are in the world. So something somewhere is not stacking up for people. And if money is at the heart of that, well, let's get that sorted and out there and talked about in a safe, economically, environmental, psychologically safe way.
Yeah, and it's creating those safe places to be able to do that. I know when even just the basics of worrying, and I don't mean where it goes to sort of clinical anxiety or something like this, but where somebody's just worrying about it actually impedes their ability to make rational choices. And I always say to people, do not make a financial choice whilst you're worrying. You need to take a step back from that. And there's various ways in which we can do this. But I mean, that's in essence what you're talking about is the fact that we are more likely to make not so good choices when we're in a bad place sort of mentally.
Well, we talked about those 5 pillars, and those 5 pillars are all interconnected, particularly if one of the impacts of stress is that your sleep is now becoming less quality and disturbed. And there's a statistic somewhere that says that if you're sleeping for less than you should be, it's the equivalent of driving drunk, because your cognitive ability to make decisions is impaired because you're not living with good sleep. And then from that, it has many other implications on your health, your decisions of nutrition, your exercise, your energy. And the consequence of all of that is also relationships, in that you have relationship breakdown because you're not delivering to your best potential as a human being. Yeah.
And when you look at things like this, then what is it that you think, well, can be done? We know we're talking about let's get it into the open, let's talk about it, let's get it to a point where people are able to talk about it without being judged, without being seen as or it affects their life or their career or whatever it may be. But what practical sort of steps can people take to really start to address some of these things?
Well, how long have you got on that question, Phil? I mean, there's a whole societal norm, isn't there, around the fact that we're encouraged to have houses that need furnishings, that have to have the cars, we need to go on holiday, and social media comparison says that I've got this, you need to have that, and there's this whole societal comparison theory that makes people just perhaps make the wrong decisions because they feel as though they need to conform.
Yeah.
So there's that. But then also understanding that there are people out there, and there's some very good ways that you can eliminate some of that stress. And whether it be going to Citizens Advice or going to debt charities or talking to people like yourself, going to things like Step Change, Pay Plan, there are ways that you can eliminate the constant telephone calls, the text messages, the letters that are coming through. But the most important thing is to take responsibility for where you find yourself in, because a problem will not go away just because you stop focusing on it. It'll still be there. If anything, it will get worse.
Yeah.
So the quicker you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I have got a problem and I can do something about it, and ask the question is, who can help me? Not how can I fix this? Who can help me?
Yeah.
And when you answer a question with who can help me, you find people that can help you, as opposed to it's all on me.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I would like our listeners to appreciate is the fact that what you've just said is so vitally important. It's not to be afraid of A, acknowledging there's a problem, B, taking responsibility for it, and C, asking for help. And that's the stumbling block for many people, because they wonder how people are going to respond to them. And you've given us some very good pointers in terms of, especially when it comes to things like debt and money challenges, who you can go and talk to. And my emphasis there would be, do that. I'd say to anybody, I've been there myself. I've been in an indebted situation. I've experienced hardship in finances. And I got to a stage where, you start to think of things like, am I going to lose my house? And what we tend to do in that place of the emotional high, in the sense of how we're reacting, and our ability to think cognitively and rationally is impaired, we start to catastrophize. And when we catastrophize, the whole world could come to an end. When in actual fact, if we draw it right back, it's actually good to ask for help, and it's the right thing. And the fact that, because I've worked in the industry, I know the ones that you mentioned actually treat people with the utmost respect, the utmost confidentiality. There is no judgment whatsoever, and people can get the help and the support that they need, whomever they are, wherever they are, and whatever circumstances they find themselves in. But when we're talking about somebody in business, what are some of the challenges perhaps they might be facing that could put them in that similar place of uncertainty?
I think there's two words that come to mind here, which is ego and pride. And so many people are too proud, or the voice on their shoulder says, that's the wrong thing to say, or you shouldn't really be that transparent. And actually, who are you really fooling by not being honest, or not having integrity, or not dealing ethically with your own emotions? Because the consequences of not being honest can be, there's so many ramifications against your employees, against your relationships with your significant others, your children. And I would just ask anybody today, if they're not proud enough to admit that they've got a problem, the problem is within themselves.
Yeah.
And leaning into the problem that you have created, it's not going to go away. There's no magic wand, there's no lottery ticket. We need to take ownership and responsibility and start taking action on how we've got ourselves to that position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sounding really on my own little soapbox here, but I have got some skin in the game here as to where I've come from, running a business for 20 years, and also working with individuals on some pretty emotional issues that they've often brought to a meeting.
No, I think it's great that you say that, Chris, because we're not talking theory, are we? I mean, both of us have had our own journey in life and have had our own experiences, and probably learned some pretty hard lessons in the process. But we bring that to the table to, I suppose, in a way, try and encourage and support and help others make perhaps better choices. And I suppose in many respects, and you talked earlier on about high levels of suicide or suicide attempts. It's shocking, some of the figures that you look at today. And there is that sense of hopelessness, but there is hope. There is always a way forward. It might not be an easy route, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I know, even some of the things that you're doing with the Midlife Men's Project, and even your own work that you do, you're offering solutions to people to some challenging circumstances and uncertainties in life.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why this particular role really appealed to me, is because I think so many times, particularly in big businesses, they are not aware of the consequences of what it means not to get paid. Tide and Go Cardless have done some amazing work on research, and it says that 82% of businesses are failing due to cash flow. 35% of decisions when a late payment comes then affects the rest of the supply chain.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the mental anxiety that is caused to a business owner. And sometimes, a big supplier says, "Oh, I'll pay the big bill, the £10,000 one, and we'll just miss the £300 one." The £300 one actually could be the difference between a small business putting cash into the till and buying groceries that weekend or not. And that's the fragility, particularly when we're facing a rising tide of economic circumstance currently. Being able to make payments with certainty, which is where we are with Soltaire, allows the small business owner to make choices. And when you've got choices, you can then have impact. But without choice, you have no impact.
Yeah. I know certainly in my conversations with people, when they talk about choice, they also talk about either powerful or powerless. And when they start to think of the fact they've got no choice, they feel powerless. And also there's a propensity there then to want to avoid, bury their head in the sand or what have you. And you're right, these things don't go away. They need to be faced. But sometimes people feel like I just don't feel strong enough in myself to face it.
Or they spend an enormous amount of time chasing the cash. When I was working in my last self-employment role, I know that I had to always be on the back of one of my biggest providers of cash flow, because their invoice processing department was, quite frankly, inept. Their zero payment ratio on days was 48 days, which goes against the policies of the prompt payment code and everything. But I had to be, and this is me chasing them 48 days late.
Yeah.
And one day it was, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but we're all off sick because we've got COVID, and therefore we can't run the pay run this week." Well, I'm sorry, but those implications affect people in a way that means that we can't buy stuff, we can't pay people. And that's what really appeals to me with where I am now, is that big corporates can allow the supply chain to get paid with certainty, and if needed, get paid early, which can then create cash flow, investment, employment expansion. Like I said, it enables choice. And when you say it gives power, well, here's to that. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and when you think of the small business person, you then think of the fact that it reduces stress and anxiety for them. And has a positive knock-on effect when they're able to receive payments in allotted times. My one experience many years ago was with a card company, and it probably took them about nearly 4 months. And you're right. I think of what you're talking about chasing and the time spent in doing that could have been spent on other things. And it got to a point where I literally had to threaten legal action in order to get a payment. And
it's so much wasted energy.
It is.
If you look at, there's a poll by Tide Digital Bank, and I did it this week on LinkedIn, 900,000 hours per day is spent chasing invoices. What could we do with 900,000 hours for this business or this world or this economy, or to free up our time to spend our time with our kids or our partners? 900,000 hours.
Yeah. I think if you live to the age of 80, you've lived something like 4,000 days. You equate that 9,000 hours to days, and you're thinking, life is short enough as it is, without spending all that time doing things that, to be quite frank, people shouldn't really have to do. But we do. And it just really brings home, doesn't it? Sometimes the fragility of life, the shortness of life, and how much time we waste doing things that we don't want to do, we shouldn't have to do, when we could be doing things that are really meaningful. And going back to that point you were making earlier on about, I suppose in a way, if I use the term purpose, people feeling like they've got a purpose in life, yet all of these things we talked about can actually detract from that purpose. And people with purpose are a lot happier, earn more money. This is the research that's come out about people who have a sense of purpose in life. And oftentimes when we see people get to the end of, say, their working life, they've not felt like they've fulfilled what they're meant to fulfill. What do they do now? Nobody wants me anymore. You can understand even at that stage how suicide rates rise.
And the other thing about when you find somebody working with purpose, they're like a steam train that can't be stopped. There's so much momentum. And the other thing I love about purpose is that they're also change makers, and they challenge that, well, that's the way we've always done it mentality. Yeah. And it shouldn't be that we have to continue to chase payment because that's what we've always got to do.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a way that we can say to people, we can do something about that. And the Solitaire solution that I'm now really excited about working with gives that win-win on both the buyer side and the supplier side to have certainty around payment.
That's fantastic, Chris. I'm mindful of the fact that we've run out of time, but this has been absolutely excellent. And you're right, we could go off at all manner of tangents and open up a whole plethora of subjects around this area. But if people are provoked in this conversation and would like to know more, have a chat or anything like that, how would they get hold of you, Chris?
Well, the best way for me individually is to go to the Midlife Men's website, which is mid-life.men. We share a weekly podcast, and we also have our 5 fundamentals that come out on a Friday around those 5 issues of mindfulness, energy, nutrition, sleep, and relationships. And in my corporate life, it's Solitaire.io. And from that place, I'm sure our marketing team would pick up the agenda with a big business that wants to learn about how to pay people on time, or a supplier that just wants to get a little bit animated about their big business that doesn't pay them on time.
That's brilliant, Chris. Thank you so much. This has been really interesting, and I'm sure provoked many a thought with our listeners. Thank you, Chris, for being my guest today.
And can I just appreciate you for what you're doing here, Phil? I think it's a really, really important issue, connecting money to mental health, and long may that continue.
Thank you very much, Chris. You take care.
Thank you, Phil.